What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and you asked, so we're finally going to get around to covering the Gunslinger class from Mage Hand Press, which was originally in Valda's Spire of Secrets, in full. So we did a preview just kind of going high level, and one thing that I do think is worth noting, in case it wasn't clear in the last video, is that the version you might have in the physical printed version of Valda's Spire of Secrets is set for 2014 rules. The version that you have now on D&D Beyond has been updated to include things like weapon mastery properties to make it fall in line with 2024 rules. So just, if you're somebody that said, hey, I'm not doing 2024, don't buy it on D&D Beyond. The only downside is you won't have it in the character creator in D&D Beyond, which you will have if you were to choose to use it here. But again, you just have to, I guess, ignore the 2024 aspects. So here it is. Let's go ahead and dive in to this and take a look. I'm very curious to see the subclass differences myself more than anything. D8 hit die. Okay, so it kind of falls into that sort of mid-range as far as hit die goes. More on the not necessarily fighter style. Skill proficiencies, too, from a pretty sizable list. Very rogue-like in the list. Acrobatics. Although animal handling's in there. I guess we're going for that cowboy gunslinger vibe here. Athletics, deception, insight, intimidation, perception, persuasion, sleight of hand, and stealth. Simple and ranged weapons, and then light armor. We have our table here. You can see we do get up to 4 weapon mastery properties. And then we have risk dice, which start off as 4d8 and scale all the way up to 6d12. We start off here at level 1 with a fighting style of your choice. It says if you choose a feat such as great weapon fighting that requires you to hold a melee weapon in 1 or 2 hands, you can use that feat with ranged weapons. Okay, so that's a little bit of a qualifier there. So great weapon fighting, again, which in 2024 is you would re-roll, or sorry, you wouldn't re-roll. You treat rolls of a 1 or a 2 as a 3 on the die. This is, again, great weapon fighting, typically specific to melee. Whereas fighting style here, this accident saying you can use it with, again, if it's requires for a melee specific, you can use it with ranged weapons. So I guess that would mean that dueling would work if you're only wielding one weapon, say a shield, although you don't get access to shields. So whenever you gain a gunslinger level, you can replace this feat with a different fighting style feat. Fair enough. Quick draw. All right, advantage on initiative rolls, and you can draw or stow 2 weapons that lack the two-handed property when you'd normally be only able to stow or draw 1. Okay, that's pretty standard and has a lot of functionality in the way 2024 works, where you're able to draw and fire or draw and attack with the same weapon. An advantage on initiative rolls is kind of our new immune to surprise. So, all right, then we get weapon mastery. We've talked about that. You can change those out on a long rest. All right, critical shot at level 2. Attacks with ranged weapons score crit on a 19 or 20. At Gunslinger level 9, they score a crit on an 18 to 20. And on Gunslinger level 17, they crit on a 17 to 20. That is pretty powerful. The fact that it's only a 2-level dip to get critting on 19s and 20s. Now, granted, it is specific to only ranged weapons. So you're not going to want to like be a paladin necessarily and take a 2-level dip to get critting on 19s. But the fact that that's kind of the champion fighter's whole shtick is the fact that they can crit on like 19s. And the fact that you are better than the champion fighter at this sooner by getting it at level 2 and then getting the 18 to 20 crit at level 9 is kind of crazy. Because, and then again, obviously beating out the champion fighter entirely by critting on 17 to 20. And this is just kind of a feature from level 2 that passively levels up. But I don't know, does it offset? I mean, you're a gunslinger. I was gonna say, I guess it's to some degree offset that it's ranged weapons, but you're a gunslinger. Your whole thing's gonna be ranged weapons. So it feels like it is kind of stepping on the toes of what goes on with the champion fighter. So not only do we get that at level 2, we get risk, which is those dice we were talking about. So you can perform incredible feats of daring fueled by special dice called risk dice. You have 4 risk dice, which are d8s. It's expended when you use it. You get them all back on a short or long rest. Your risk die, and we saw the table, it changes as you level up. You can expend risk dice to perform maneuvers. This is very similar to a battle master, seemingly. And then if it's a saving throw, it's based off your proficiency bonus. Subclass at level 3, ability score improvements are standard. 2 attacks at level 5. Gut shot, also at level 5. Whenever you score a crit hit against a large or smaller creature with a ranged attack using a weapon, the projectile lodges itself in the target for 1 minute or until the target replaces one of its attacks with a dislodging the projectile. Its speed is halved and it has disadvantage on attack rolls. That is also very strong. This is a very strong class. I don't think I'm ready to call out OP, but it is very strong. So the fact that you are critting more often, and if you just crit again, it's limited to large or smaller, but the only thing that's going to be kind of tricky is tracking the projectile. So if you're playing at a physical table, maybe some sort of condition ring or something that the DM can turn on, depending on if you're playing online or virtual tabletop, so that you can remember, hey, this guy is disadvantaged in half speed because I shot him in the gut. I do like this is very much 2024 coded, replaces one of its attacks with dislodging the projectile. That way they don't have to take their full action if they have multiple attacks. Obviously, if they only have one attack, it would be their full action to dislodge it, but either way. You also get evasion. Starting to think this may be a little too strong. All right, we've got multiple things to let us crit. We've got maneuvers. We've got a disadvantage debuff in just scoring a crit. Then we also get evasion, and we're not even done with the base class yet. Overkill. When you deal damage with a ranged weapon that doesn't add your ability modifier to the roll, you add your ability modifier nonetheless. If you already add the modifier to the roll, the target takes an extra D8 weapon damage. Note that weapons that have the firearm property don't add your ability modifier to damage rolls. I don't think that that's true. Is that true? Oh, this is a new thing for this. Okay. That's a new thing for the Gunslinger. Um the musket and the pistol from the 2024 Player's Handbook would do that. And I guess their blunderbuss would also do that. But this is a specific thing for this class. There are certain higher level items that are considered firearms that wouldn't normally add your modifier, which in this case they now would. Or if it is something like a pistol or a musket from the 2024 core rulebooks, you're just going to flat out do an extra D8 damage every time you shoot. So you basically, to some extent, have the paladins like improve divine smite just automatically here at level 11. Extra D8 damage on the base weapons, evasion. Okay, and we still got more to go. Cheat death. When you're reduced to 0 hit points and not killed outright, you drop to 1 hit point instead, and you regain a number of hit points equal to your gunslinger level once per short or long rest. That's fine. That falls in the line of like classes like this. The fact that you're only getting hit points equal to your level is also kind of surprising. I feel like a lot of these classes now are getting double their level or things like that. Dire Gambit. When you roll initiative or score a critical hit, you regain 1 expended risk die. I'm fine with that. That makes sense. Um, let's see. Epic Boon, or sorry, Deft Maneuver. You gain a special bonus action that you can take once on each your turns. You can take the special action only to use a maneuver. Wait, what? You get a special bonus action that you can use to take. Okay. So, a special additional bonus. Oh, Jesus. Okay. You get an extra bonus action, but you can only use that bonus action to use a maneuver. Okay. And then we get an epic boon. Fair, which is reasonable. Then we get also here headshot as your capstone. Now, this can be pretty crazy powerful because it's capstone. When you score a critical hit, which mine are at this level, you're scoring a crits on 17, 18, 19, and 20. Using a ranged weapon, you can choose for it to be a headshot. If the creature has less than 100 hit points, it dies. Otherwise, it takes 10d10 damage of the weapon's damage type. Once you use this feature, you can't use it until you finish a short or long rest. You can also restore your use of it by expending 3 risk dice. Okay. This is a capstone. I'm on board with heavy damage. It being an insta-death or 10d10 damage, I think is solid. That works out. It's got to be less than 100 hit points. At 20, you have 6 risk dice, so you'd have to spend half your pool of risk dice to recharge this. It does recharge on a short rest as well. You do get also all of your risk dice back on a short rest. So I might make it expend all your risk dice, minimum 3, right? Meaning you couldn't recharge it if you have less than 3 risk dice. But if you have more, I think it should spend them all. I really do, because you're going to get them all back on a short rest. You're going to get this ability back on a short rest too. But it is a capstone, so I'll give it that. But I think the base class is a little too strong in and of itself. The fact that you're getting an additional bonus action is kind of nuts. All right, here's your maneuvers. These are the ones that we have the risk dice for, and then again here at level 18, we get an additional bonus action to just use these. All right, bite the bullet. Bonus action, expend a risk die, gain temporary hit points equal to the number rolled plus your gunslinger level. Okay, so at high levels, it would be a D12. Low levels, it's a D6, D8, D8, D10, D12. Okay, that's fine. Blind fire, you can take a bonus action to expend a risk die to gain blind sight in a range of 30 feet. Reminder that at high levels at 18, you can do this as a bonus action and then still have your bonus action. Dodge roll. You can expend a 1 risk die as a bonus action to move up to 15 feet and reload any ranged weapon you're holding. Doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity and is unaffected by difficult terrain. Grazing shot. When you miss with a ranged attack roll, you can expend 1 risk die, no action required, to deal damage to that creature equal to the roll of the die plus your dex mod. The damage is the same type dealt by the weapon, and the damage can be increased only by increasing the ability modifier. You can use this once per turn. All right. So this is kind of almost like giving the guns the graze property, right? Where you're just dealing a little bit of extra damage, even if you miss. Maverick Spirit, when you fail an intelligence, wisdom, or charisma ability check or saving throw, you can expend a risk die to add it to the roll, potentially turning a success into a success. This is only once per turn, but also notice that it doesn't require any action economy. Sorry, my phone is blowing up right now. It doesn't require any action economy to activate that. That's just upon a failure. And lastly, Skin of Your Teeth. When a creature you can see hits with an attack roll, you can take a reaction and expend 1 risk die to dodge out of harm's way. Roll the die and add the number roll to your AC against the attack, potentially causing it to miss. So we've got an ability check, saving throw, potential failure prevention. We have basically an equivalency of shield with Skin of Your Teeth. We have guaranteed damage and grazing shot. We have a little bit of movement here and dodge roll and a reload for free. Very, very Destiny coded where we're dodge rolling and reloading our weapons. And then blind sight and temporary hit points. So actually the maneuvers, they're not that strong. Honestly, they're kind of the weaker aspect of the base class. I almost kind of want to be like ditch the risk and give them a different mechanic. And then like some of these other things like cheat death is fine, like dire gambit and deft maneuver. Like I'd almost kind of at this point say ditch the risk dice. I know it's very much like people have this concept of wanting to use grit or, it was in the critical role one and these risk dice. I kind of say ditch them and come up with a different mechanic because it's pretty, without that on top of it, it's a pretty solid class in and of itself. It is still very strong, don't get me wrong. But my guess is maybe that's the power of the subclasses is they're going to give us additional uses of maneuvers as a unique aspect for the subclass themselves. And that may be why we're seeing like the concept of risk dice, because that's a very easy subclass design concept is to just be like, okay, we have these risk dice. The Deadeye has a unique risk. The High Roller has a unique risk. And that's how we differentiate the subclasses well. It's just giving them unique risks. If that's the case or unique maneuvers, then I'm more okay with it, but I still think the class needs a little bit of retooling. All right, so the Deadeye. Shoot with bullseye precision. Eagle Eye, here it is. So I was right. It's maneuvers. Eagle Eye maneuver. Once per turn, when you miss with an attack roll, you can expend one risk die and add it to the attack roll, potentially causing the attack to hit. So this is again almost like a shield, but for your attack. We're adding it after we miss to possibly turn into a hit or a precision attack, which I think was a Battlemaster maneuver. You also get Sharpshooter's Stance at level 3. You've trained to fire from a stable prone position. You don't have disadvantage on ranged attacks as a result of being prone. That makes sense. And then quick stand, when you have the prone condition, you can write yourself in there by end the condition with only 5 feet of movement. Fine with that. I like that. Concealed position, camouflage. You can take the hide action even if you aren't heavily obscured or behind 3/4 total cover. As long as you have the prone condition, the invisible condition of this hide action ends if you don't have the prone condition. All right, this is you kind of laying down on the ground, kind of tapping into some of the ranger camouflage abilities there. Sniper's Nest. If you make an attack roll while hidden and the roll misses, making the attack roll doesn't reveal your location. I am noticing you are getting a lot of feat level power from these classes and subclasses. So there's actually, yeah, I mean, I guess to some degree it might be beneficial that you won't be really looking for too many feats because you get a lot of the functionality from the base class or the subclasses. Reposition. Whenever a creature misses you with an attack roll, you can use a reaction to end the prone condition on yourself and move up to half your speed. I think that fits pretty well with the power fantasy. And then focused shot. When you take the attack action, you can choose to make only one ranged attack roll using a weapon to make a focused shot. You have advantage on this attack roll and on a hit, score a critical hit. That is very strong, especially given some of your abilities here, like uh headshot at higher levels, right? You basically can just choose. I mean, you are a sniper, so I guess that kind of makes sense, right? You're laying down, you focus in, you only do one attack. Granted, you only have two attacks, so you're not sacrificing too much. Like if it was a fighter sacrificing three or four, that but if you hit, you have advantage on the attack roll if you're choosing to take a focus shot, and then if it hits, it's a crit. All right, next up here is the High Roller. This is obviously going to be your gambler style. Poker Face at level 3. Proficiency with gaming sets and your choice of Deception, Insight, or Perception. And then Liar's Dice is your maneuver here. When you make a damage roll with a ranged weapon, you can expend one risk die as a bonus action to declare it to be a hidden roll. Roll the damage in secret and declare any total you wish. The GM has the option to call your bluff, in which case you reveal the damage dice you rolled. This has different consequences based on whether or not you lied. The GM calls your bluff, you lied, the damage you deal is halved. The GM calls your bluff, you told the truth, the damage you deal is doubled. The GM doesn't call your bluff, use the total damage you declared, even if you rolled a different total. Okay, I know I was kind of shitting on maneuvers for like maybe being a tacked on extra mechanic that probably wasn't necessary. And I still kind of stand by that. I love this. I know this is not going to be for every table. I'm very well aware of that, but I actually really like this mechanic. Of the, yep, I'm going to hide the roll. And then James, all right, what you do? You're going to be like, yeah, I did 13 damage. And they're going to be like, all right, well, you're bluffing. Clearly show me. And that also gives you a fun functionality of how good are you at bluffing in real life and how good at you are you like at playing your DM. Because in theory, if I'm like, I mean, yep, totally a 13, definitely 13. Like I'm playing that up to seem like I'm lying. But if I'm telling the truth and the GM calls me out and I know I'm telling the truth, my damage just doubled to 26. I don't know. It could be a fun mechanic. I actually kind of like the concept, but I realize that's definitely not for everybody. Risky Business at level 6. Once per turn, when you make an attack roll against an enemy roll, and the roll doesn't have disadvantage, you can choose to make the roll have disadvantage. When you do, you regain one expended risk die. Okay, you're taking a risk by giving yourself disadvantage to regenerate risk die. I'm liking the mechanics a lot. There's a lot of risk reward with this one. Risk Taker, speaking of the next ability, when you use your Maverick Spirit and Skin of Your Teeth maneuvers, you can use them without expending a risk die. When you do so, roll a d6 instead of a risk die. Okay, so this is similar to like Battle Master Fighter in 2024, like the Swords Bard, where you can just, instead of having to spend your dice, you can just use a D6 instead. Again, this I gotta say, I mean, whether or not we can agree on the power level being on the strong side, which I think we all can, it synergizes very well with itself, right? Maverick Spirit and Skin of Your Teeth requiring a risk die. Okay, well, now I can use a D6. Don't forget that I also can have at high levels an extra bonus action just for maneuvers. So you got a lot of stuff going on here. And then Double or Nothing. I'm very curious to see what we got here. When you score a critical hit using a ranged weapon, you can gamble for a higher result. Roll a d20. If the roll is a 10 or higher, roll all of the attack's damage dice 4 times and then add them together instead of only 2 times as normal for a critical hit. If you roll a 9 or lower, the critical hit becomes a normal hit. Okay. Okay. I kind of like this. This is nuts, right? It's the gamble, though. You're taking that shot in the dark, and that's what your class is. So I kind of like this a lot. Maybe this is just my personal bias. I don't know. Let's move on to the Secret Agent. This is your espionage character. All right, operative training. You learn the concealed shot cantrip, which we'll talk about in a minute. Intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, your ability modifier for it. You pick disguise and thieves tools and are proficient with them, and you get 2 skill proficiencies of your choice: deception, investigation, persuasion, sleight of hand, or stealth. Very much allowing you to sort of sub in for the rogue if there isn't a rogue in the party. Parting shot maneuver. When you take the dash, disengage, or dodge action, you can expend a risk die to make a ranged attack as a bonus action. You're going to add that damage die or that risk die to the damage roll. This is just you're running away to leave. You're just firing off parting shot. Fieldcraft. Quick change. Use a disguise kit. You can create a costume and don it as a bonus action. Slick talker. Whenever you make a deception or persuasion check, treat a roll of a 9 or lower as a 10. God damn. This is all at level 3. This is, I feel like it's just the kitchen sink class, right? Like, what do you want to play? You want to play a rogue? Sure, with like some bard code here where you just like you can't you're always gonna succeed at like deception and persuasion checks. We're gonna give you essentially reliable talent for 2 skills at level 6. So that's also sooner than the rogue gets it. I don't know, man. I don't know. All right, exit strategy at level 10. When you take damage, you can take a reaction to evade further harm. You have the invisible condition until the start of your next turn, and you can immediately move up to 10 feet. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest, and you can also use it by expending 1 risk die. All right, I like this one. It kind of makes sense. You take hit, and you kind of are dodging to try to hide. I like it. And then License to Kill at level 14. Whenever you deal damage with a ranged weapon, which will be always for you pretty much, you can expend 1 or 2 risk dice and add them to the damage roll. If you roll the highest number on a risk die, you can roll that die again and add it to the damage without expending it, rolling it again if it is the highest number again, and so on. The maximum number of risk dice you can add equals your proficiency bonus. So this is limited exploding dice for your License to Kill function. All right, Spell Slinger. Now we're gonna bring in magic because we're good to have everything. We gotta have everything, right? 2 cantrips of your choice. It looks like your table below will show what spells you have. Okay. You're going to use intelligence for this. You can use a ranged weapon as your arcane focus. So it's basically following Eldritch Knight, essentially, like progression. Bang, you're dead. Level 3. You can finger guns. You learn the finger guns cantrip. And when you hit a target with finger guns, you can expend a risk die as a bonus action and add it to the damage roll. Spell Shot. When you take the attack action on your turn, you can place one of your attacks with a casting of one of your wizard cantrips that has a casting time of an action. Again, this is very similar to what the the Blade Singer has. That's what I was looking for. There we go. Level 10, Counter Mage. Abjuration Breaker. When you make a ranged attack roll, you temporarily disrupt protective magic affecting the target. For the duration of the attack, the effects of spells targeting the creature, such as mage armor, as well as the properties and powers of magic items worn or carried by the creature, are suppressed and don't function. The target of this attack can't take a reaction to cast spells such as shield in response to the attack or damage. This is too strong. This is basically anti-magic field, targeted anti-magic field. Um, it there's no save. You just do this, right? Whenever you make a ranged attack roll, you temporarily disrupt protective magic affecting the target. For the duration of the attack, okay, so just that singular attack. So you're basically like, hey, if you have a boosted AC to 36 with all these magic items, I'm shutting it off for this attack. It doesn't say this attack action, just this singular attack. And they can't cast shield. So it's a way to sort of bypass armor in some way. But again, there's not a lot of things that let you cancel out magic items in this game. So well, who knows? All right, anti-magic shot. When you score a critical hit and the target is affected by your gut shot feature, it also impedes the target's ability to cast spells. While the projectile is lodged in the target, it can't cast spells or take the magic action. Additionally, the target has disadvantage on Constitution saving throws made to maintain concentration. Okay. Inured to magic. When you fail a saving throw against a spell or magical effect, you can take a reaction to roll a d6 and add it to the roll. And then lastly, our maneuver comes in at level 14 called Magic Bullet. When you make a spell attack roll, you can expend one risk die as a bonus action to substitute the spell attack with a ranged attack using a weapon. Add the risk die to the attack roll. On a hit, the attack deals the weapon's normal damage in addition to the effects of the spell attack roll. All right, so this is essentially channeling, right? If you go back to the old Dusk Blade from like 3.5, where you could hit somebody with your sword and channel the effects of a spell through your sword. So you not only would do the sword damage, you'd also do the spell damage, but that allow you to like bypass saving throws and things because I'm just hitting you and it's transferring over. So not only can I shoot you, I can then also apply these effects of whatever spell I'm using. Again, I don't have access to too crazy of spells here as the spell slinger. I only have access to level 4 spells at the most, but excuse me. The fact that I could shoot you, well, it has to be a spell attack roll. So it can't be like a save or suck spell because it has to be a spell attack. But even still, I like I said, I gotta commend the synergy, right? The fact that anti-magic shot can synergizes with gut shot, going back to a feature from early on in the class. I really like the way all these things synergize. I just feel like you can do like too much. You could have a whole party of gunslingers and everyone could play drastically different, which is definitely a nice thing for variety at the table, but you don't like you almost the only thing you don't have currently is a healer. But I bet that's coming. So let's see. Trick shot. Creative trajectory. When you make attack rolls, you ignore half or 3/4 cover. All right. Ricochet is your maneuver. When you miss with a ranged attack using a weapon, you can take a bonus action and expend one risk die to reroll the attack and add the risk die to the roll. You must use the new roll. Okay. Fancy gunplay. Once per turn, when you make a performance or sleight of hand check using one of your ranged weapons, you can roll a risk die and add it to the ability check without expending it. All right, out of combat stuff. On your turn, you can reload a weapon with the reload property without taking an action or a bonus action. Deft deflection, another maneuver here at level 10. You can shoot projectiles out of the air. When an ally within 30 feet of you is hit by an attack, you can use your reaction to expend a risk die. Grant that ally the benefit of the skin of your teeth maneuver. You must be holding a ranged weapon to use this. This is essentially you trying to shoot the weapon out of the air. And then pinball shot at level 14. Once on each of your turns, when you hit a creature with a ranged attack using a weapon, you can deflect the projectile at additional targets. Choose a different target within 30 feet of the first and make an attack roll against it. On a hit, you can repeat the attack against a new target within 30 feet until you miss or make a total of 5 attacks. You can't target the same creature with more than one attack each time you use this feature. Once you use this feature, you can't use it until you finish a short or a long rest or until you expend 2 risk die. And lastly, we have the white hat. Lay down the law maneuver. You can take a bonus action to expend 1 risk die to keep an eye out for dangers to threaten your companions. Choose an ally you can see within 60 feet. That ally gets temp HP equal to the number rolled in the risk die. Until the start of your turn, if the ally is hit by an attack, you can take a reaction to make a ranged attack against the attacker. So it's almost like Sentinel. Steely-eyed aura. An aura of stoic confidence radiates from you in a 10-foot emanation. You and allies within the emanation have advantage on saving throws to avoid or end the frightened condition. This aura is inactive while you have the incapacitated condition. So this one seems like the paladin. Reach for the skies. When you score a critical hit against a creature, you can call for a target to surrender instead of lodging a projectile in it. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw against your maneuver save DC or have the frightened and incapacitated conditions. They end early if it takes any damage, if you have the incapacitated condition, or if you die. They can repeat the wisdom save at the end of each of their turns. Long Arm of the Law at level 10. Once per turn, when you hit a larger, smaller creature with a ranged attack using a weapon, you can hobble the target, meaning they can't take the disengage action on its next turn. And then lastly, Gold Star Hero at level 14. Improved Aura. The range of your Steely Eyed Aura goes out to 30 feet, again, giving you Aura improvement before the Paladin. Ironclad Law. When you use your Lay Down the Law maneuver, the ally has resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing until the start of your next turn. And then Stunned Surrender. When a creature fails its saving throw against your Reach for the Skies feature, it has the stunned condition instead of the incapacitated condition. That is a lot of variety, which I do appreciate, but I still think the class is just so strong, by like even just a base class with no subclasses is very strong. All right, then we have our firearms. We kind of went over these in the previous video here, right? Here's your sort of they added blunderbuss, which has a scatter function. And they upgraded some of these here. We have double barrel shotgun, revolver, cannon, Gatling gun. Then we have modern firearms like a handgun, assault rifle, sniper rifle, and so on. Some of these have the various properties. Again, firearm is a new one. You don't add your ability modifier to the weapon's damage unless otherwise stated. The ammunition is destroyed upon use. Recoil is a new one. After you make an attack with this weapon, you can't make ranged attacks beyond the weapon's normal range until the end of the current turn. Reload was added here. This weapon can be used to make a number of attacks before it must be reloaded. Actually, that might not be added. That might be in the Dungeon Master's Guide. If you're proficient with the weapon, reloading it takes an action or a bonus action. Otherwise, it takes an action for everybody. Then we have a couple new properties here in automatic, which is when you make an attack with this weapon, you can choose to make 2 attacks instead. They're always a disadvantage. But again, you're kind of spray and praying. You have Explode, which is going to be an AoE. When you take the attack action, you replace one of your attacks with an explosion from this weapon's projectile. The explosion is a 5-foot radius sphere centered on a point you choose. And if they fail, they're going to take the weapon's damage, but you don't add your ability modifier to it unless it's negative. All creatures, though, within that 5-foot radius. And then also Scatter was added. Being within 5 feet of an enemy doesn't impose disadvantage on the range attack rolls. Again, you're firing a spread. And then Sighted. Attacking at long range doesn't impose disadvantage. When you hit a creature with an attack using this weapon at long range, you can re-roll any of the damage dice and use the new roll. We have our various guns there. We have pricing here for ammunition. We have some new feats here. Iron Hero, level 4+. Increase your strength or dex by 1. When you are attacked by a creature that has a challenge rating higher than your character level, you gain a +2 bonus to your armor class for that attack. You have advantage on attack rolls against any creature that has reduced one of your allies to 0 hit points since the end of your last turn. Yeah, against a creature that's reduced. Yeah, let's knock somebody out. And then Heroic Intervention. When an enemy you can see takes a legendary action, you can take a reaction to intercede, preventing the legendary action from happening. You can take this reaction a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus and get them all back on a short or long rest. Should really like that. Marksman's Luck. Increase your dexterity score by 1. Flip die. Once per turn, when you roll for damage with a ranged weapon, you can flip one of the damage dice over and use the number on the bottom. You can't use the ability on D4s. Note that for a balanced die, the top and bottom numbers add to 1 more than the die's largest number, right? So 2 and 5 and 6 and 1. Enhanced critical. When you score a critical hit with a ranged weapon, the target speed is 0 until the end of its next turn. That's also very good given some of your existing abilities. And then Gun Mage Adept. Increase your dex by 1. You gain proficiency with ranged martial weapons. Again, reminder, these can be used for not just the Gunslinger. These can be used for other classes. You learn the Finger Guns cantrip. Your expanded spell list adds Anti-Ballistics Field, Ballistic Smite, Conjure Cannonball, Conjure Cover, Jam Weapon, Jethro's Instant Reload, and Perforating Shot. Choose a number of spells equal to your proficiency bonus from among the list, and you always have them prepared. Whenever you gain a new level, you can replace any of these spells with a different one. Then we have our couple of spells here. Anti-Ballistics Field is a level 6 spell. A 40-foot emanation extends from you, disrupting projectiles and causing ranged weapons to malfunction. Within this emanation, whenever a ranged weapon is used to an attack, the weapon immediately malfunctions and the attack is lost. A malfunctioning weapon can be used to make an attack, can't be used until a creature takes the utilize action to fix it. Ranged attacks using weapons whose projectile pass through the emanation have disadvantage, but only deal half damage on hit. Ballistic Smite. Choose acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, or thunder damage. The target hit by the attack takes an extra 2d6 damage of this type. The triggering attack can deal the chosen damage or its normal damage, your choice. And it increases with a d6 for each level above 1. Concealed Shot is a cantrip. A ranged weapon you touch is supernaturally subtle. For the duration, when you make a ranged attack using the weapon or ammunition you're using becomes invisible while in the fight, and the weapon becomes silent. If the weapon produces smoke or light, the spell suppresses these effects. The weapon or projectile you're using becomes visible again after the attack hits or misses. If you are hidden and the target is 80 feet or further from you, the attack doesn't reveal your location. Okay. Conjure Cannonball. You summon a cannonball mid-flight at full velocity, which explodes on impact. Make a ranged spell attack against a target you can see within range. On a hit, the target takes 5d10 bludgeoning damage, and an explosion extends from it in a 5-foot emanation. Each creature other than the target within that emanation makes a dexterity saving throw, taking half as much damage on a failed save. It goes up for a d10 each level above 3. I actually really like Conjure Cannonball. That's like a nice, solid level 3 spell for damage. I like that. Conjure Cover. You conjure a low cobblestone wall along the ground at a point you can see within range. The wall is 18 inches thick and is composed of 3-foot long, 3-foot high segments. Each segment must be contiguous with at least one other segment. A medium creature that hunkers behind the wall has half cover, and a small creature has 3/4. The wall can be leapt over without spending any extra movement. Each segment has AC 10 and hit points of 30 hit points. Reducing a segment or of the wall to 10 hit points causes it to crumble. The wall disappears when all segments are destroyed or the spell ends. Finger guns. You extend your forefinger and thumb. Dangerous gesture mimicking a gun. It has a simple ranged weapon with a range of 60 to 40 and the slow mastery property. You can use your spellcasting ability instead of dexterity. On a hit, it deals 2d6 force damage and doesn't add your ability modifier to the damage. Its range increases by 30 feet, so the damage stays the same at 2d6 force damage, but it does have the slow weapon mastery property. It's also a bonus action to sort of conjure it, and for that duration, you could be like for a minute. A bonus action, non-concentration as well. So up at level 17, the range will be 150, 600, similar to a longbow. Jam Weapon. A reaction when you take when a creature you can see within range is attacking using a ranged weapon. The weapon you target offers a malfunction and the attack fails. A malfunctioning weapon can't be used to make an attack until the creature takes the utilize action to fix it. Jethro's Instant Reload. I love the name. One ranged weapon you touch becomes enchanted to reload itself automatically. If the weapon has the loading or reload property, you ignore them for the 8-hour duration. When the ammo is depleted, ammo you are carrying teleports into when the weapon's ammo is depleted. Ammo you're carrying just teleports into the weapon over that 8-hour period, so you don't actually have to do the reload if you have ammunition on you. And lastly, Perforating Shot. As your attack hits or misses the target, the weapon or ammunition transforms into a 5-foot wide line of magical energy that extends out from the weapon's normal range. The line includes the attack's original target. Each creature within the line makes a dex save, taking force damage equal to the weapon's normal damage on a failed save or half on a success. And it goes up by a d8 for each level above 1. So there you go, folks. That is the Gunslinger class kind of full review from Valdo's Spire of Secrets / the 2024 update. Again, I'm going to come out and say it is a very strong class. It gives you just about a little bit of everything, depending on the subclass that you want to play. But I actually really like the spells. I really like the feats as well. And I think some of the options and things they did with the weapon mastery properties and the firearms is really nice. I'd actually really like to see Wizards of the Coast do more weapon mastery properties or add some, like tweak some of the existing weapons or give them like an option. They could have this or this so that you can just inject more variability into the base game. But I don't know. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. I'll see you all next time.